Yo, what's up YouTube? This is Gresnick, and welcome to another reaction video. Today we are reacting to Film Theory. You are trapped in the amazing digital circus. We just got episode 8. 8? Yeah, right? I'm insane. I'm not gonna remember which episode we're on. I'm pretty sure it's episode 8. Yeah, oh, I just ruined this whole intro. This is so funny. Okay, yeah, we just got episode 8. So, game theorists have made a video on it. And I'm excited, because game theory tends to give us pretty good quality videos. Very good quality videos. So, as always, like and subscribe to the like and subscribe to the film theorists and myself. Comment down below anything you want me to react to, how you're doing, what you think of the video, and anything else. So as always, let's get into the video. I said the wrong thing. Speech is hard.
You are trapped in the amazing digital
I'm too lazy
circus,
to do
and
this
I
multiple
am
times.
too. All of us theorists are falling into the same trap as this cast, and there is no escape from the amazing digital circus. So let's talk about it. Hello, Internet!
Film
Welcome to
Theory.
Film Theory, the show that either tells the truth or lies.
I'm the one that tells lies.
Dude, you ruined it.
Hey gang, a new episode of the amazing digital circus just dropped, so, I wanted to hop back into that world again. But, well, we're taking a bit of a swing here. Not because I necessarily think that this theory is wrong or anything like that, but because this is coming out the very same weekend as a brand new episode of the show. Generally, it takes us 2 weeks to
Oh. This is before episode 8. Okay, this is gonna be interesting to see then.
actually make one of these theories, one to research and write it, and one to edit it, so this video won't be addressing anything in episode 8 beyond what's in the trailer. But even then, well, episode 7 gave us a lot to talk about. See, doing theories about the amazing digital circus has always been a strange experience for me. I mean, just look at one of our videos last year where I talk about how we were just wrong about the series. But recently, it's been even more challenging because of the events of episode 7. Yeah, in case you need a refresher, this episode has the cast meet up with a secret cast member who's been lurking in the background of several episodes. A mannequin named Abel. He claims that he's a human who was given an NPC's appearance and therefore has been overlooked by Kane, and that he's been able to sneak around in the background because of it. He explains that he and Kinger were the ones that invented the digital circus together at a company called C&A, and then leads the cast on a quest to escape the circus. And I mean, hey, that sounds great. That confirms some of our theories, right? However, at the end of the episode, Jax foils the plot and forces everyone to stay in the circus. But then Kane appears and explains that actually none of what we just watched was even real. There was no Abel. Kinger's past is still a mystery, and the escape was a lie. It was all just an adventure that Kane cooked up because he knew the cast wanted out of the circus, and this was his best shot to give them what they wanted.
You mean this was all...
An adventure! Yes! And one I've been cooking up for a good long while.
We'd previously speculated that theorists weren't going to be quote-unquote happy with episode 7 because it was going to be shutting down a lot of the things that the community was putting together about escaping the circus. And, well, we were right there. Heck, this episode even went out of its way to poke some good-hearted fun at the whole religious angle we pointed out when the show first aired and now forever lives on in Matt Pat out-of-context compilations. To be honest, I've been stuck thinking about this and how exactly to approach the show now. I mean, I really like this series and want to continue talking about it, but you know, the amazing digital circus really does seem to go out of its way to laugh in the face of videos that explain how one small detail reveals everything. What do you do to work with that as a theorist? And well, the more I've thought about it, the more I've dug deep to figure this show out, the more I realized that we are just as trapped as the cast here in the amazing digital circus. Me, you, every theorist out there, we are trapped by our ideas, and even then, despite all of that, if we look at 3 pieces of inspirations that we know influenced the Amazing Digital Circus, and one that I'm pretty sure did, we can use those clues to figure out where this story is going. And spoiler alert, I think the answer has been staring us in the face the entire time. We've mentioned this before, but there is no escape from the Amazing Digital Circus. Kane and his AI are going to torture these characters until the end of time, and that's the point. But you know what? That may still be the best thing for this show and its ending. So transform into your circus sonas, friends, as we once again venture into the Amazing Digital Circus. So what are the 3...
Okay, yeah. This is gonna be an interesting video because we've already seen episode 8. That came out a couple days ago. And this came out what was made beforehand. So this is going to be an interesting video to look at because I'll be able to go, man, this wasn't correct, and I'll be able to go, okay, cool, they actually got this right. So that's going to be fun.
influences I mentioned earlier? Well, first up, let's talk about I Have
Yep. They even directly reference this in the song for episode 8.
No Mouth, and I Must Scream. We've talked about this story very briefly before in a previous Digital Circus theory, but in case you need a refresher, or, you weren't forced to read this one in school, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream is a short story written by Harlan Ellison. It's set in a world where the Cold War escalated into World War III and then destroyed the planet. We wouldn't know anything about that, would we? Every country created their own supercomputers called Allied Master Computers, or AM for short. However, the computers eventually merge and gain true artificial intelligence, destroying humanity except for 5 individuals it keeps alive for its own amusement, forcing them to go on adventures that have no real point. Doesn't that sound familiar? Anyway, the story is pretty short, and you can actually listen to the audiobook, narrated by the author himself, right here on YouTube. It's definitely worth the listen. I Have No Mouth is an incredibly influential story and spawned its own video game, and it's pretty well known that Gooseworks was inspired by the story for the Amazing Digital Circus. And I mean, yeah, just on the surface, that's pretty clear. But if you dig into the story and what actually happens in it, you'll find a lot about where the Digital Circus story might be going, especially for its characters. For instance, check out this quote from the short story. But even though we could call Am any damned thing we liked, could think the foulest thoughts of fused memory banks and corroded base plates, of burnt out circuits and shattered control bubbles, the machine would not tolerate our trying to escape. The human characters could think anything they wanted to about Am, but the moment they tried to actually leave him, they were punished. Now, this isn't quite the case in the Amazing Digital Circus yet, but given how much Kane seems to be devolving, it could very easily become the case down the line if he starts going more insane, right? Like, there seems to just be a terrible communication gap between Kane and the cast, because communication is difficult, even in the Amazing Digital Circus, but it
Yeah, I smell a theory, not a theory, yeah, sponsor. And I'm very correct. He is very right there, and it's even pointed out in episode 8 with Pomni even just flat out telling Kane that he just doesn't listen. As always, use their code and stuff to support them, but
The personalities of all the characters within I Have No Mouth have been altered, either amplified into something terrible or changed in ways that conflict with the soul of the character. One was once handsome and intelligent, but now looks like a giant monkey and has been driven insane. Another was once peaceful and idealistic and was changed to be bored and apathetic. A third had his name stripped from him and is traumatized frequently. A fourth has been abused and programmed to enjoy it. And the narrator? Well, he believes that he hasn't been altered by Am, despite Am making him far more introverted and paranoid. Ironically, this makes him believe that the others hate him for not being changed despite truly having been. And as you can imagine, all of these are just terrible fates. Now, obviously, this isn't exactly what happens to the characters in the Digital Circus. Like, their bodies seem to take on characteristics of their personalities already, which then amplify those personalities even further. We talked about this in depth before in our character studies, but just some top-level examples. Well, Zubul feels very uncomfortable in their body, so their design is very plug-and-play with different arms and legs and whatnot, so they can try to find something better. Gangolb seems to go back and forth wildly between being happy and sad, so they use the comedy and tragedy masks to show how they're feeling. We don't need to go through for everybody, you get the idea. That being said, we also know that Kane can tweak their personalities.
Let's skip this one, and also make Jax a vegan for the rest of the day.
You can't do that.
This is weird because it seems like he's able to control specific things as a kind of a bit, I think. Is that it's meant to be a bit. It the kind of, I don't know if he's actually capable of changing their personalities without them, well, probably abstracting.
But he insists that these aren't permanent.
I may have the ability to add temporary modifiers to make adventures more interesting, but that's it. If I did anything more, trust me, it would not end well.
Scratch, the first abstraction.
Did you hear that? Kinger is remembering somebody named Scratch, the first person who ever abstracted, because Kane changed his personality too much. Here, Kane claims that he doesn't do this that much anymore, but, well, what if he's wrong? If he doesn't remember? Or what if he's just straight up lying? Next, both of these AIs throw these characters into wild goose chases. The plot of the I Have No Mouth short story is all about these characters looking for some relief, to find some canned food to cure their endless hunger in caves far away. And to get there, they start a massive journey to go look for it without any real evidence that there's even any canned food at the end of the road. That sounds a lot like what happens in Digital Circus episode 7. Where the cast latch on to even the slightest chance that there's an escape from their digital prison without any guarantee that there's any chance it could work. And both I Have No Mouth and episode 7 end similarly. When the cast of I Have No Mouth eventually do find the canned food after a dangerous, treacherous, torturous journey, they realize that they can't open any of the cans and put them on this adventure without any way to actually finish it. Similarly, the cast of the Digital Circus try to escape before realizing that it was all just another game that Kane set up and that there's no actual way out. The motivations for Am and Kane are very different in these situations. Kane was trying to fulfill a fantasy for the cast while Am was just trying to inflict pain. But that outcome is still awfully similar. And if we apply that to the future of this series, well, I could see Kane once again trying to pull what the cast want to happen as a wild goose chase, torturing them with things that they want just out of reach, but in a way that just makes every...
No, we don't end up getting this because in the next episode we actually don't... Well, it might have. We don't actually get to see any of the adventures they end up going on. All we know is that they did go on adventures and they really hated them.
Everything worse. Again, this has been written and recorded before episode 8 was released, but based on the trailer we see, we might get a hint that he's going to be doing this with former members of the cast, characters that have already abstracted. We can briefly...
This is a flashback.
See Queenie appear in a scene with Kinger, and it looks like Jax is holding a coffee cup identical to one seen in a photograph with Ribbit and...
I'm pretty sure that might just be a reuse thing. Maybe that's just what Kane has as coffee cup in here.
Kaufmo. And look, it seems like Ribbit's shadow can be seen.
That's pushing it a bit. It could also, it looks like Ragatha as well. Or maybe Zubul. This isn't true. I understand, yeah, this was beforehand, but I'm still going to point out things that end up being wrong.
In the corner of this image. So it looks like this story is going to bring in either visions or flashbacks to the...
Flashbacks were correct.
These abstracted characters, or Kane is going to somehow resurrect them for either the next adventure or in some twisted attempt to make the rest of the cast feel better.
That could have been an interesting route to go down. Actually look into the abstractions, which I was kind of hoping we might. But it seems like we're not going to, unless if that's going to be something in episode 8.
Make them love him, even though this would do the opposite. Either way, the main thing we can learn from this inspiration, from how I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream handles the characters that its AI is torturing, whether it's coming from a place of just wanting to make the cast happy or a secret urge to hurt them, Kane will keep dangling what the cast want in front of their faces, but he can never really give it to them. He can't offer them a way out or bring their friends back. There is
Gummy Goo shouldn't be there. He's not real.
No escape. And, well, that might not just apply to the cast, but for anything and everything in the circus. What do I mean by that? Why do I say it? Well, it's all because of the second piece of inspiration here, the 1998 film, The Truman Show. If you've never seen The Truman Show, well, you absolutely should go watch it. It's a classic and one of the best performances of Jim Carrey's career. But the long and short of the plot, the movie follows Truman Burbank, a guy who's the star of the most popular reality TV series on the planet. Every waking moment of his life is recorded and broadcast for the world to see, and everything is part of the show. His friends, his job, even his wife. In fact, he straight up lives in a massive television set where everything and anything can be controlled. The lights, the day, the weather. But the twist? Truman doesn't know he's in a reality show. He's been raised since birth, thinking that this is just his life. And the producers of the show do everything to keep the illusion alive for Truman to make the best show possible. Now, obviously, a lot of these ideas already line up with the digital circus. Everything in both series is constructed by the producers or by Kane. Everyone is watched all the time. Events are manipulated for the betterment of the show, and in a lot of cases, a lot is done to keep the secret or mystique of the storyline going. But, of course, by the end of the film, Truman realizes what's going on. And in one of the most memorable moments from cinema, he says,
"In case I don't see ya, good afternoon, good evening, and good night,"
before disappearing through a door at the edge of the set. The visual of this shot is iconic and was actually recreated for the thumbnail.
I love that so much. It was really funny.
For the trailer for episode 8, with Kane taking the place of Truman. Clearly, they want us to associate these moments, how the cast of the digital circus are basically Truman in this situation. But what's interesting, though, is that the person in place of Truman here in this thumbnail image isn't one of the cast members, someone who is being toyed with or observed all the time. You know, someone like Pomni, who you think would be a perfect stand-in here. No, instead, it's Kane. Which then begs the question, is Kane actually the stand-in for Truman here? Are we supposed to sympathize?
We should feel bad for him. I mean, he legitimately can't really do anything the cast wants him to do.
With Kane? And the answer to that question isn't clear-cut. I mean, this is a complex situation. Obviously, Kane is an AI and not in the cool, helpful tool sort of way. He's generating these experiences from regurgitated ideas, like the slop an AI art program would spit out. And he has no real understanding of what it means to be human and alive. You know, thus why he then unintentionally tortures the cast. But also, like, he didn't choose to be alive.
This is pointed out in episode 8.
He was created. He's also trapped here in the circus in a way. And
he made it himself entirely, so kind of. I mean, yeah, he is technically trapped there.
Taking the real world conversation about generative AI out of this show and this situation, I mean, I feel for Kane. He needs people to enjoy his adventures, his creation. He is trying to get the cast to talk to him, trying to interact with them, and yet they want nothing to do with him. He creates all of these things that he thinks are awesome for them, and they don't like any of his ideas. They just want something that he cannot give them. Honestly, in a lot of ways, he feels like a stand-in for an artist. Well, at least one here on the internet. So based on those two pieces of inspiration, there's no escape for the cast, and there's no escape for Kane and his crew either. But what about the world, the digital circus itself? Well, to get some answers there, we can look at influence number 3, a video game called The Stanley Parable. If you don't know, this was a game about an office worker named Stanley who finds himself alone in his empty workplace. A narrator begins describing what Stanley is then supposed to do, guiding him through the building. But Stanley doesn't have to follow the instructions. I mean, you as the player can, or you can disobey. Every decision leads to a wildly different outcome where Stanley might escape, die, shut down the game, or seemingly break the story itself. And here's the thing, Gooseworks has said that the Stanley Parable influenced a lot of how she does things, and I mean, that's pretty clear, right? Just visually, if you're looking at footage from the game, you can probably already tell that it looks very similar to the quote-unquote real world we see in the amazing digital circus. And from a thematic point of view, well, no matter what, Stanley can't actually win in the Stanley Parable. The game is all about the illusion of choice and if you disobey the narrator, that has already been written in as an option. Every path leads back to the same loop, more or less starting the game over, and in some cases it might even reset or crash the game. That, loyal theorists, is also the end game here in the Digital Circus. This is a story where there almost certainly won't be a happy ending, and in a way, everything loops. One character abstracts, and then another's gonna come into the circus, over and over and over. Pomni is just the most recent incarnation of this, and it seems as though Kane and the circus and all of the NPCs have accounted for anything and everything the cast want to do. Alright, so as a quick recap here, the cast are trapped just like I Have No Mouth, Kane is trapped just like The Truman Show, and the circus itself is sort of a looped trap based on the Stanley Parable. Now, obviously, something can be inspired by a work and not take every single theme from it, and again, I have to stress that this was written and recorded before episode 8 came out. But that's a lot of signs pointing towards the answer of how to escape from the torture that is the Amazing Digital Circus being that there is no answer. There is no escape. And honestly, that gives me a lot of complicated emotions. Like, on the face of things, that's a fascinating way to take this story, and Gooseworks and Glitch should tell the story that they want to. But it's also a bit disappointing as someone who likes there to be answers, that likes to be able to solve a mystery as it's being laid out. But what I believe we also need to consider here actually comes from a final influence on the story of the Amazing Digital Circus. One that I don't believe Gooseworks has directly pointed to, but that is still clear. The play Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett. I promise this is relevant. If you're not super well versed on absurdist comedy and theater, Waiting for Godot is the story of two men waiting beside a tree for a mysterious figure known as Godot. The pair never actually go anywhere, and Godot also never arrives, despite the belief that he'll be here tomorrow. The play ends almost exactly where it began, with the two men still standing and still waiting. Now, that might sound pretty frustrating as an audience member, and believe me, this play can be really divisive for regular theater goers, but if you take a step back and understand what Beckett was going for with this story, things become a bit clearer. Another way to pronounce this title is Waiting for God-O. It's a religious allegory. It's saying that God is not going to magically come in and save you, and you need to make the best of what you have. And that is the theme of the Amazing Digital Circus. These characters are in a terrible, horrible situation, and for them, a real escape probably isn't going to be finding a literal door that leads to the outside world. I mean, they had an entire episode of the show shutting down that idea. No, the real escape is going to be a change in mindset to survive their new reality. And the conclusion that I've come to after spending months thinking about this series and trying to theorize our way out of this show, out of the problems that it's laid out before us, as a fandom, that's leaving us just as trapped as the characters in the circus itself. Like, think of it this way. The Amazing Digital Circus is a series that just did not go the way that we expected, that I expected. It seems like there's no real, true means of escape here. As we've said, there isn't an answer, which can feel disappointing. Who doesn't love to feel like they've solved a puzzle? And I mean, we're theorists. We like to look at story beats and predict what comes next. We love closure, and a lot of the time we yearn for that happy ending. But that just isn't the story that Gooseworks and Glitch seem to want to tell here. Have you heard the term death of the author before? It's the idea that when a work of art is released out into the wild, what the author intended it to mean doesn't actually matter all that much anymore. You can agree or disagree with that. I see both arguments, though personally I agree with it more than I don't. But that doesn't apply when the work is still being made, when it's still being written. The author isn't dead until they actually make the art. And what Gooseworks and Glitch are still making with the Amazing Digital Circus is what goes right now. They have that final say. Now, let me be clear, that is not to say stop theorizing. We should never stop looking at the world from new angles. But when it comes to a fictional world like this, that shouldn't be an excuse to go after a creator just because the theories about their work didn't pan out, or the story didn't go in a direction you wanted, or the character you wanted to be the main one isn't the main one. I don't want us, both the loyal theorist community and any online community that loves overthinking media like this, to get trapped here. I don't want us to be like these characters, searching for an exit where there isn't one. This show might never give us the answers we want, and you shouldn't be upset about that. Trying to find a way out or waiting for the voice of God to come in and fix everything to be exactly like we want it to be when that isn't what they're even trying to do. And hey, I mean, while I like to be right, I'm also okay being wrong. That's why I'm cool writing this theory before an episode comes out and releasing it 2 days later. Like, dog, do you know how scary
Very
that can
funny.
be? And well, I mean, hey, if you ever do want the story to go in a different direction, we can always write fan fiction. But hey, that's just a theory. A film theory. And
That did not say what I thought
but
it said.
hey,
Me watching the squirrel outside my window blink my full legal name in Morse code. What the hell? I wasn't expecting this meme at the end. It's great. Well, good theory, as always. It is very funny for you to release this 2 days after episode 8, and it be made before it. It's very inconvenient and funny. So it's much more of a episode predictions that you probably hoped you put out the week before. Yeah. He got some things correct, and he got a good amount of things wrong, as always, since he was very speculative about next episode. But, as always, like and subscribe to the Film Theorists and myself. Comment down below anything you want me to react to, how you're doing, how you feel about the video, and anything else you want to comment down below. And I'll see you next time. Goodbye.